and keep it in storage tanks. The plant's operator has also been looking at other solutions. They are examining a plan to create an ice barrier around the damaged reactor buildings to prevent the groundwater from flowing in. They've also started to clean up contaminated water already stored in nearly 1,000 tanks around the facility. But the water treatment system has been repeatedly suspended due to technical problems. Managers at the crippled plant say they plan to release the groundwater once a week for the time being.
Across Japan, 18 idle nuclear reactors need safety checks before they can be restarted. The operator of a plant in the eastern prefecture of Ibaraki is the latest to join the waiting list. An executive of the Japan Atomic Power Company submitted an application to the Nuclear Regulation Authority to have the Tokai No. 2 plant tested. He says they have upgraded measures to withstand a possible earthquake, 50% stronger than previous projections. The company is also building an 18-meter embankment to hold back tsunami. However, the utility faces many obstacles to resuming operations. The plant began operations in 1978, making it the oldest of the reactors awaiting screening. Nearby municipalities must also devise evacuation plans for the 1 million people living within a 30-kilometer radius of the plant. That's the largest number of potential evacuees among all the nuclear plants in the country. Tokai Village, where the plant is located, and 10 other local governments gave approval for the application last week. But they say applying for screening and resuming operations are separate issues.
The plan to restart 2 reactors at the nuclear plant in central Japan have won a victory. A Japanese court says safety measures at the plant are insufficient, and it's ordered the operator to keep the reactors offline. This is the first ruling against the restart of a nuclear plant since the accident at Fukushima Daiichi 3 years ago. The 2 reactors at the Oi nuclear plant in Fukui Prefecture were shut down in September for regular inspections. Residents and their supporters had filed a lawsuit asking for the reactors to be kept offline. They argued that they were not designed to withstand huge earthquakes. The plant's operator, Kansai Electric Power Company, insists the facility is safe. The Fukui District Court upheld the claims of 166 plaintiffs living within the 250-kilometer radius of the plant. The presiding judge said the utility's estimates for possible maximum tremors are overly optimistic and unreliable. He said the cooling systems of the reactors could fail to function in an earthquake. Officials of Kansai Electric say they will appeal the ruling. The court's decision could have an impact on discussions about whether to resume nuclear power generation. All 48 of Japan's commercial reactors are currently offline. Japan's Nuclear Regulation Authority is screening safety measures at several plants to determine whether they can be restarted.
I have no comment on court rulings. We continue to conduct safety screenings in accordance with our own policy.
Japanese courts have historically ruled in favor of power utilities. Most lawsuits filed since the late 1960s by residents hoping to halt nuclear facilities have been dismissed. Plaintiffs in 2 cases have their claims upheld regarding the Shika nuclear plant in Ishika Prefecture and a Monju fast breeder reactor in Fukui Prefecture. But higher courts later overturned the rulings. A group that opposes nuclear power generation says about 30 cases are presently before courts against 16 nuclear facilities. Japan's top government spokesperson has distanced the administration from the court's ruling.
The government is not a party to the lawsuit. I will decline to comment on the ruling.
Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga added the administration's policy to restart the country's nuclear plants will not change. He said the government is waiting for the results of a number of ongoing NRA screenings.
The decision to resume operation at nuclear plants should not be in the least arbitrary or involve government interests, but instead be made objectively, with safety a priority.
Suga said the NRA's safety standards are said to be the toughest in the world.
The author of a controversial Japanese comic has released his latest storyline. The long-running manga has been criticized for the way it depicts radiation contamination from Fukushima's nuclear accident. In the latest edition, the author responded to criticism by saying the scenes were intended to raise important questions. NHK World's Noriko Okada reports.
Oishimbo has sold 120 million copies since its first publication in 1983. But recently, it has attracted fierce controversy. It was triggered by this scene. The main characters are suffering nosebleeds after visiting the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. And a former mayor of a village near the crippled plant says the nosebleeds are due to radiation exposure. It also depicts a local expert saying that it's impossible to make the prefecture habitable. The portrayal angered people who thought the storyline could lead to discrimination. The governor of Fukushima made clear his feelings on the content.
It's totally unacceptable. The storyline as a whole gives the wrong impression of Fukushima and may give us an unfair reputation.
Cabinet members also criticized the story, saying it is scientifically baseless and fuels rumors. The author responded by saying that the story is based on information he gathered during 2 years of research in Fukushima. He says the future of Fukushima is the future of Japan. The editor of the magazine says his intention was to raise questions about radioactive substances and low-dosage radiation. Fukushima residents say they are uneasy about the content.
It said we should be courageous enough to escape, but where can we go?
It's a very sensitive issue. I wish they had expressed it more thoughtfully.
An American professor who studies Japanese literature also sees a number of problems in the narrative, such as describing Fukushima as a whole despite the regional differences in levels of radiation. But Robert Campbell says the author had a point.
We who live on the outside of that, and perhaps in our hearts want to support people who live there, need to be a little more literate, perhaps be a little more active, spend a little more time looking between the crevices to see what's actually going on there. He gave us a chance to look in between the cracks and to see part of what's actually going on in Fukushima.
The magazine editor said that the latest installment of Oishimbo has concluded and will not appear in the magazine for a while. But the difficulty and uncertainty for the people of Fukushima will continue.
Managers at many Japanese companies can't find enough people to hire. Officials at Japan's labor ministry are now looking at expanding a program that helps firms solve staff shortages. They say low wages and difficulty in taking time off are causing more and more workers to give up their jobs. Restaurants and medical facilities, for example, find it hard to attract employees. Analysts fear the problem could get worse as the job market recovers. That makes it easier for workers to be picky about what jobs they choose. Ministry officials are considering boosting subsidies for companies. that want to improve pay and other working conditions.
Leaders have been hoping exports will pick up a bit of momentum, but things are not going as they wanted. They've just found out the trade balance is in a deficit for the 22nd month in a row. Now, Finance Ministry officials say the deficit for April was $8 billion. That's down 7.8% from a year ago. Exports surged more than 5% in yen terms. Automakers shipped more cars to Europe. And people in the telecom industry shipped more products to China, including LCD panels for smartphones. Imports rose 3.4%, but that was slower than in March. Some analysts say the increase in the consumption tax dragged down imports.
Japanese leaders have laid out ambitious plans to turn the economy around, but they're having a tough time getting trade to flow in the direction they want. Ai Uchida joins us now from the business desk. Tell us more, Ai.
Well, Catherine, Japanese leaders are facing some challenges that none of their predecessors have had to deal with. The Fukushima nuclear accident has forced utilities to import fuel to power homes and businesses, and that's helping keep the trade balance in the red. In fact, Japan has been in a trade deficit for 22 months straight. Finance Ministry officials say the deficit for April was about $8 billion. That's down 7.8% from a year ago. Exports surged more than 5% in yen terms. Automakers shipped more cars to Europe, and people in the telecom industry shipped more products to China, including LCD panels for smartphones. Imports rose 3.4%, but that was slower than in March. Some analysts say the increase in the consumption tax last month dragged down
Members
imports.
of Japan's ruling coalition are to discuss collective self-defense. Party officials will examine a report that calls for a reinterpretation of the country's constitution. It would enable Japan to come to the defense of a country it has a close relationship with that is under military attack. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe received the report from a panel of experts last week. He said he is in favor of allowing for collective self-defense under certain conditions. Members of Abe's Liberal Democratic Party and coalition partner New Komeito will examine the matter and other defense issues. They're expected to begin by examining how Japan should respond to incidents that are not immediately recognizable as an armed attack. They hope to lay out means of dealing with possible scenarios, such as an armed group pretending to be fishermen landing on one of Japan's remote islands. Officials will also discuss a legal framework to allow Japanese self-defense forces on UN peacekeeping missions to use weapons if UN personnel come under attack. The Japanese government has traditionally interpreted the Constitution as barring Japan from engaging in collective self-defense. Coalition officials will exchange views on whether this should be altered. LDP Vice President Masahiko Komura says he wants the cabinet to decide on the constitutional issue before officials from Japan and the U.S. start discussing defense guidelines later this year. New Komeito Secretary General Yoshihisa Inoue says that the inter-party discussion will be challenging.
If the interpretation of the Constitution is changed every time a new government comes in, it could undermine legal consistency. We really need a thorough discussion.
LDP officials plan to present various scenarios in their effort to convince new Komeito members of the need for collective self-defense. Incidents that might arise include Japan assisting U.S. naval vessels in the event of an emergency on the Korean
Months of
Peninsula.
searching, U.S. authorities say they have finally pinpointed the source of a radiation leak at a waste disposal site. The accident in the state of New Mexico in February exposed dozens of workers to radiation. Officials with the U.S. Department of Energy say the leak was found in a damaged holding container. It occurred in a facility 660 meters below ground. 22 employees on the surface were exposed to low-level radiation. Photographs released by the authorities show the container had a cracked lid and that there was evidence of heat damage. The repository is a final disposal site for nuclear waste, including soil and equipment contaminated during the production of nuclear weapons. It has been accepting waste from national research organizations around the country since it became operational in 1999. The department says the damage was found on one of the containers brought from the Los Alamos National Laboratory, also in New Mexico. It says it will investigate how the damage occurred and examine other containers for any damage. It is expected to be at least 3 years before the facility resumes full operation.